Welcome to Recovery Recharged with me, Ellen Stewart, Pushy Broad from the Bronx. How does recovery work? How do you use the tools of recovery in everyday life? How do you help someone who is learning to overcome addictive behaviors? The Pushy Broad from the Bronx is here to talk about recovery in a language that we can all understand. Be prepared for real change by recharging the way you think, feel, and act. It's time for Recovery Recharged with Ellen Stewart, Pushy Broad from the Bronx on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Welcome, Transformation Talk Network listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the Pushy Broad from the Bronx. Welcome to my show, Recovery Recharged, with my illustrious co-host, Dr. Pat. How you doing, Doc?
I am in the moment of this show because, when you work in the arena that we work in, and I think about my mom, and you're at this place where you wonder, is there a solution? Because you stand by the sides and the souls of so many people that have tried. I just went through this recently with someone. And what you realize is there are heroes in this journey. And that's what you're shining a light on today, aren't you, Ellen?
Absolutely. There's no question. You know, we've spent close to 3 years together, you and I. And
Yeah.
I first brought a recovery program to TTN, and I'm thrilled about it. I was thrilled that you gave me the go-ahead, the green light to do it. And during this time, as you know, we have brought many experts to the table.
Yes.
Many clinicians, many people who are experts in the industry who help us get the help that we need and have given us the facts. But today, we have an even more powerful story, I believe, because we have a personal story that is riddled with heartache and redemption as well. And I am just absolutely humbled and honored, and I know you are as well, to receive this guest today and her powerful story. So let me tell you a little bit about Maggie Burke. Maggie is a loving mother of 3. She is a dedicated neonatal intensive care unit nurse. She is also an Ironman triathlete, that's unbelievable to me, and a fierce advocate for addiction and mental health awareness. She's happily married to her best friend of 27 years, and Maggie and her husband reside in the western suburbs of Chicago. It is our privilege today to bring to the table on Recovery Recharged our guest, Maggie Burke. How are you this morning,
I'm good.
Maggie?
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're very glad to see you. I want to start right from the top. I want you to tell us what happened on the night of June 18th, 2020.
Yeah.
You know, our lives changed forever that day. Our worst fears became our reality. Watching a loved one struggle through mental health and addiction issues, you wake up every morning with an elephant full of fear on your chest. And you hope to God you don't get that call or someone's at your door. And someone was at our door June 18th. 2 police officers came to our house to tell us Cormac was found dead in an abandoned little t-ball field in the suburbs early that morning. I'm usually not lost for words, and I will tell you, I shake as I describe this. I can't even put words to sitting through those discussions and those police officers in front of me. What I struggled most with is he died alone. And so much love, so many resources, and no one, no matter what their choices are, deserve to die like that.
Tell us about your son. How old was he, and what were his current struggles leading up to that point?
He was 22. He had just turned 22 in April. Cormac was very complex emotionally. He had a lot of emotional struggles through anxiety, depression. He was a victim of an assault, a very violent sexual assault at 14 years of age, which profoundly affected him moving forward. and he turned to drugs to self-medicate. And he struggled on so many levels through the anxiety, the depression, self-image, shame, PTSD. You never knew what was the driving force, at different times in his journey. He was a true fighter.
It's such a difficult situation. And Dr. Pat, you
Yeah.
mentioned in the beginning that it was the same situation for you and your mom. Do you see some parallels here?
I'm seeing it left and right. I mean, I look at how unaware we all are on and clearly we have more studies, more statistics, more surveys, more international surveys that come out, and they talk about the happiest people in the world and then the not so happiest people in the world. So you have to ask yourself this question: why are we studying this? Why are there so many surveys? Well, because we know there are issues going. We know this. We don't need a mass shooting to know that there's something going on that we have not addressed, especially in our youth, right? And it's not like we haven't been awakened to it over time, but no one should have to experience, Maggie, what you just experienced. And now you're in search, you're in action, you're in warrior mode, we need to know something. We need to do something. We need to understand the purpose for our pain, because I do believe that. I think the purpose for the pain of losing my mom, and then just burying all the rest of my family, drug, alcohol, oh my gosh. I mean, but for what? What am I going to do with it? Isn't that why we're having this chat today? Because this is really a call to action, Maggie, isn't it? And you're really setting the stage for that.
Yes,
You want to
I
talk
think
about that?
giving a face to this crisis. This freckled ginger little lad of mine is the face of this crisis. This family is the face of this crisis. And the sooner we continue to have these dialogues and give a story and a background, I refuse to let it be a statistic.
Thank you.
I think people need to see in reality what this looks like, and that no one is immune to this. And there's so much work to be done. There's so many messages to unpack in Cormac's, journey. Good, hope, pain, suffering. I mean, they're all there. And I still cling to hope. I am a firm advocate of hope and the worthiness to get better, and that people deserve peace and happiness, and the chance to obtain that, and that's part of the, finding good in the pain.
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead,
Ellen, I
I'm
want to
sorry.
ask you this question too, because you spend a large part of your life every day actually looking in the eyes of other people, looking deep in the souls of other people. And, gosh, I had a comment made the other day in passing to me, and I had to do all I could do, just bite my tongue. I wanted to say, wait a minute, folks. People are struggling. We're talking about an illness, whether it's mental, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs. We're talking about people. They didn't sign up in life for this. They are trying the best they can. But I think what today is about for you, Ellen, and the question is, you're in it every day. Maggie, you're in it every day. I want us to understand there is hope, but we also have to face it. We have to acknowledge it. We have to not put our heads in the sand and say, oh, it's all good.
Exactly right. Yes, you're exactly right. And being in it every day, the biggest lesson that I have seen, and also what Maggie is trying to say, is it comes from everywhere. My clients represent all races, colors, creeds, sexual denominations, genders, walks of life, religious belief, economic beliefs. It touches everyone. It's a pandemic. is exactly what it is. And it spreads everywhere. And it's not restricted to the poor, and it's not
No.
restricted to the rich, and it's not restricted to people in ghettos or people in condos and high rises and penthouse apartments. We are looking at how it's affected everyone. And because we are talking more about it, and because we do shows like this, and because you, Dr. Pat, are so open in what you say, and the airtime that you give us to do this, people are not hiding anymore. And the discussion is more out in the open.
Yeah.
And someone as brave as Maggie is saying, yes, this happened to my son. I want the world to know that he was a
Yeah.
real human being with feelings and honesty and with a real message. And now, Maggie, you've taken that message and you've taken Cormac's message, and you've made an acronym out of it, MAC, M-A-C. And I want you to
I love
tell
acronyms,
us,
by the way.
isn't that wonderful? Tell us what MAC, MAC stands for, please.
So the message of MAC, M standing for meaningful, finding meaning in your life. And I think Cormac was easily overwhelmed at looking at a bigger picture sometimes, instead of looking at the little silent meanings of and purposeful movements in his life and appreciating those. I think affirmation, which is hard for all of us. Sometimes you're not in a place to affirm yourself. These are building blocks you have to learn, or to be able to affirm that, take someone affirming you and receive that. And the C is for compassion. This young man had a huge heart, tons of compassion. He could read the vulnerability in the room, and commitment to yourself. I think the biggest message of the message of Mac is you are worthy. You are worthy of this fight. I don't care how many times you fall and you get back up, you're worthy of peace and happiness, and the road to it. And finding that worthiness in your world is the message I'm trying to give, really.
Meaningful affirmation, compassion, and commitment. Those are very powerful words. Dr. Pat, we try to live that every day, don't we, in recovery?
And I got to tell you, I am so glad you brought it up, and you brought it up in the way you have, because it's one of the most misunderstood aspects of this. My mom, who took her own life, the language we use in the esoteric realm is she was an empath. I'm an empath. People don't believe that I'm an empath, but I am. I could read the energy in a room in a hot minute. And learning what to do with the energy in the room. You have an unhappy client, you have an unhappy relative, somebody cuts you off. I mean, I play a sport. And one of my partners in this upcoming championship, every point that he misses, it's like a big thing. And I'm going to talk to him today. I'm going to be like, dude, it's not cancer. We're not going to die from the ball. But you see, we learned that because the three of us are here for a reason. This has not been an easy road for me. I am not perfect. You may call me Dr. Pat, but I'm telling you, every day of my life, I strive to understanding the psyche of depression and anxiety that stemmed in my family, and that the women I work with, and my goodness, the hardest thing I've done recently, Maggie, is this. And this is what's important for the message. We have to recognize the disease. And I'm not just talking about alcohol and drugs, because there's something underneath, like there was something underneath that for my mom. My dad gave her the prescription, and then she would top it off with alcohol. Because why? She's too feisty, too empathic, cared too much, wanted to be a powerful woman, and let's just do it. But Maggie, Ellen, here's the question for you two. We now know between the three of us, there are things we can do. And Maggie, isn't that what you're bringing to the table? And how courageous of you to be out talking about. I want to tell you how important this is for me. I made a decision over the week, and I'll tell you that when we come back from break, Ellen, because I know you want to go to break. But I want to tell you, this is so important because of an experience I had with the woman that I mentor. And I just got another hit. And then Maggie, for you today to be on this show, you just reminded me of why I have to do what I have to do, right? Right, Ellen? We have to do more.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
have to
There's
do
no
more.
question. Absolutely, there's no question. And Maggie, we want you to give a little bit more background because we
Yeah.
know he's your son,
Yeah.
and we certainly know what happened on that day. But we want to have people also understand that it was not. It's important for them to understand that it was not something that was deliberately happening. All right, he
Right.
wasn't looking to take his life, and I
Right.
really do think that's important for people to understand.
Yep. It
So just
is.
let's just talk about that for a moment because you're willing to share, and also a little bit about what led up to that situation in your estimation, the kind of things that were going on in his head and what was happening when he accidentally overdosed, which is what you're telling us. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Correct.
All
Correct.
right. So let's talk about that a little more.
I think his last relapse prior to that was probably, I think, six weeks prior. It was very different. He was very angry, and he was somewhat resistive to the resources that were being put in front of him. I felt that relapse very differently than I felt the others. And he went into treatment, and he struggled, I think, to find his path moving forward, and kind of pushing away, just kind of looking for the automatic reset. And I said to him, you can't keep just picking up and resetting. You have to walk this back and process, and move forward with support. And he was pushing away all the support. And I remember Kevin and I looking at each other, and he decided not to go back to a recovery house where he would have gotten the best support, and get an apartment on his own. And God love him, I think he thought he's got this, or there's a different way, or this is a kid who's battled since 14. I mean, when you think 14 to 22, and he keeps perceiving nothing's working for him in his mindset. And I think he looked, he got his apartment on Monday. He was dead on Thursday. I wish I knew where his mind was at. I think it was in a place of tremendous pain. I think he looked to numb his pain, and it was lethal. This was not the first time. His Cormac's relapses were very destructive and lethal, almost lethal, I should say. So I think, he just was not in a good place, and kind of isolating himself to the help of others, which would have been, so important to him at the time.
The most amazing thing, and the thing that I always glean from this is, and when I see all of my clients, everybody that is suffering from this disease, many, many, many of us come from very caring, loving families and caring, loving parents. And you mentioned you and your husband were acutely aware that something was going on. You were not in the dark. So this is a message to all of the families out there that are aware and that understand that there is something going on, that sometimes these things are beyond our control. Is that right, Maggie?
Yes, I remember Kevin and I having this discussion, and he just kept saying, all this love, all this support. And I said, it's bigger than that. This was bigger than us. We threw everything but the kitchen sink for 9 years. And we had periods where he had traction and he was in a good place and he thrived. And then we had periods where he went down a rabbit hole. It was not for lack. This was 9 years of unconditional love for this child. And he knew that. I know he in his heart knew that, whether he was angry or we were angry, there was always love. And there was always support and resources put towards this.
Well, certainly you have taken this unfortunate event and really passed the message on in ways that are helping others.
Mhm.
So, how does Cormac's journey and his story help for you to break of addiction and mental health? What are you doing in your community to change the message?
I think opening the dialogue making people aware that, and Cormac, when he was in a good place, he spoke to many groups, and you could hear a pin drop in that when he spoke. He touched so many lives by public. Justin, his therapist, had him speaking multiple times at his treatment center. He spoke at his high school, at his college, and I'm just continuing where he left off in his voice, and that I'm an ordinary person, but I struggle with things. I think bringing it down to such a relatable level, and he wore his vulnerability. And so people were very attracted and felt comfortable in sharing with him their journeys and their stories. And I think bringing this point of breaking these walls of stigma and shame and fear. I think so much of society is so fear-based that they can't see the forest between the trees here. And just trying to break down that fear of this, this is a global problem. This is everywhere.
Yes, it is.
And just those messages, and then worthiness of people. I think that these cycles are so built in shame and secrecy, and our family was not going to make this a secret. We were very open to people that we were in crisis. Anyone who was important to us or important to Cormac, whether that was school counselors, our kids counselors, their coaches, we are struggling. I had no problem saying that because I can't tell my kid, let go of your secrets if I'm going to hold his biggest struggle as one.
Wow.
That's a powerful statement, isn't that, Dr. Pat?
It is. And can I jump in here? Because
Yes.
This is me, like, years and years ago, I battled in the arena of that my recovery is in. And I have 3 different areas of recovery for myself, because come on, my mom had me when she was drinking and using. Like, I popped into this world and they thought I cried for 4 years because I was colic, until my uncle put some kind of Zambuca on my gums, and they said, oh, she's teething. No, you don't teethe at 5 months old, right? So back in the day, we didn't know a lot. We know a lot now. We know so much now that a hit series like Euphoria gets on air. It hits the hearts of so many people. The young people in that film are so engaged in what's going on in the real world, and they're not afraid to address what we call dual diagnosis, triple diagnosis. But we have got to change the institutions of, help me with the language. Let me call them, I'm not even going to talk about the government for a minute, because that's a different show. But the institutions of recovery.
Yes.
And I just had
views.
I just had an experience with a new place, right? We have got to stop being so closed-minded. Like, who the heck are we to say whether a person can come in to an AA meeting and talk about drugs? Who are we? Like, what? Like, come on, people. It's addiction. But I got to get back to something you said, Maggie, because you see, there are those of us that are empaths, right, Ellen?
Yes.
And we're great listeners, but it's hard sometimes to listen and not take that on. And then it's even harder for us as empaths to open ourselves up and share it. If we can master that, we can help save lives. But you coming on the show and talking about this, and I must say that what you're speaking of, and this child's journey, is so, and I have to say this, is more common than people know. I just had to put a foot down here recently and say, you're not going to live in your apartment. You need to get yourself in a sober house. That is where you're going. And yet it's only one step, isn't it? There's so much more to this, Maggie, that you're bringing forward. But I will tell you this, I made a decision over the weekend because I did have an experience, and honestly, I thought we were going to lose somebody. When we do our crowdfunding and our expansion in September, I will have a nonprofit in place to completely fund a recovery channel. That is what I'm going to do. We've talked about what are we going to launch? What's the nonprofit? I have got to take this idea of recovery and mental wellness and put something in place, because to be honest with you two, I actually don't know what else to do. And I'm hoping that you two can tell me today. I don't know what else to do but this. You see what I mean? Because it's in my wheelhouse. But Maggie, you know what to tell us to do, don't you? We're going to talk about that, aren't we, Ellen?
We absolutely are, because she's
Yeah.
really made great strides in moving forward and really adhering to meaningful affirmation and compassion and commitment, which is really important. And to lift the stigma so that we don't associate this as being a dirty disease or something that's contagious or something that has to be whispered in hush hush fashion.
I mean,
So, when we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit more about Maggie's wonderful son, and we're also going to talk about how mothers and fathers can take a look at things and really move forward, and try to help their loved ones. Okay, let's do that when we come back.
yeah, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Hi there, if you're just joining us, this is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx. It's my show, Recovery Recharged, with my co-host and dear friend, Dr. Pat, and we are talking to Maggie Burke, mother of 22-year-old Cormac, and her story about her son losing his life to a drug overdose. And all of the missions that Maggie is undertaking right now, and the message of McCormick, which is meaningful, affirmative, and compassion and commitment. So, Maggie, I know that you have taken this message a little further and put that into developing and helping to develop a place called Trinity Sober Living for Men. Can you talk about that with us and tell us what that's all about?
Absolutely. Trinity Sober Living Cormac was the first resident at Trinity, and it is in the Western suburbs. It holds such a special place in my heart. The work that they do, the compassion, the commitment. These are people that walk the walk and talk the talk. And a beautiful integration of safety, which doesn't always come in recovery homes, accountability, a very fostered home environment. And Cormac did beautifully at Trinity. He really did. They saw my kid for who he was, and there was no judgment, and they integrated and helped him get a job and helped him get on his feet, helped him learn life skills. And when Cormac died, what do you do? What do you do with this? And I felt such an affinity for the work that they do, and will continue to fight for those that are clients there and still struggling. And we started a scholarship in Cormac's name immediately. I didn't want flowers. I didn't want this. I wanted action. I wanted to pay it forward, because I will tell you, as horrific as this journey was for 9 years, and I will not go into specifics, but I will tell you, we checked every ugly box in this journey, our family. I saw the face of God at every turn, by the people and the compassion that did for Cormac and did for us. And so I'm kind of a no surrender girl, and I'm a purposeful person, and I just look to give back, to this community and to Trinity Sober Living for all they continue to do for people on their journey to health and peace.
And you mentioned you set up a scholarship fund at Trinity Sober Living, and the website is trinitysoberliving.com/donate. Please go to the website. Please take a look at the 6,100 square foot house and the 7 bedrooms and 4 full baths and fireplaces, and a wonderful place for sober living in the Midwest. Please check it out, because anyone is available. Anyone is able to participate and to go, and certainly make a donation in Cormac's behalf. And if you want further information, you can come to me and call 800-889-1757. Pushy Broad from the Bronx. As always, I will be happy to pass on that information. So now that we're moving forward, tell me how, from a mother's perspective, give me the messages that you want to project to mothers and parents out there. Tell me what you want to say.
First, you're not alone. You are truly not alone. There are so many people, I think, that struggle in silence, though their loved ones are struggling in silence. And part of my message is that you don't need to struggle in silence. I think opening yourself up to resources and services and those that love you to share this journey with you is phenomenally helpful. The Burkes would not be standing intact today, the four of us, Kieran, Mairead, Kevin, and myself, if it wasn't for the phenomenal support and strength of my friends and my family. I think you cut yourself off from so much support by holding this to yourself. I think as parents, you do not have all the answers. There is nothing in a parent handbook to get you through this. Seeking out professional resources. Cormac was in therapeutic services. We got into therapy to get guidance and help us navigate through completely uncharted waters that kept changing. And, trying things and things don't work and trying other things. And so I think it's phenomenally important to realize you're in crisis, and as you want your loved one to reach out for help, you have to reach out for help as well in that process.
Absolutely, for sure. And of course, in recovery and all about this disease, I want you to outline for us what our mantra is, and that's the 4 C's. Would you outline that for us?
Absolutely. And ironically, I woke up and I said this to myself every day. I had to say it to myself. I had to live it. We did not cause this. We cannot change this. We cannot cure this, and we do not control this. And for a mother, I'm just speaking, that is a hard pill to swallow. We are nurturers. We are fixers by nature, but you really have to stand back and look at how this presents and be very aware of codependencies, of behaviors that your loved one may show, how to keep everyone on the same page and communicate with the family that's struggling along with their loved one. Cormac and I used to have this huge disagreement, and he would say, "Mom, this is my journey, my recovery." Absolutely. But I said, when you go down that rabbit hole, 4 people go with you out of fear and love. This is a disease of the family. It is not Cormac over in a corner struggling. We are all struggling in this process.
Yeah.
That is absolutely right. And that's why, and I know Dr. Pat, you'll agree with me, that's why it's so important for us to understand that this is a family disease and everybody is involved, especially the loved ones. And again, I just wanted to focus on this, and I know, Dr. Pat, you want to comment. You cannot control it. You cannot change it. You did not cause it, and you cannot cure it. We cannot say that enough. That is like the 4 commandments in a recovery situation. And Dr. Pat, that's sometimes what you have to say to yourself when you're an empath, right?
Yeah.
Those words.
Yeah. I think the other thing we learned too is, there's so much that the 3 of us could share about, what happens when we're looking at somebody that is in an active state. What happens to them? They are not the person that you knew. They're not the son. They're not the daughter. They're not the brother. They're not the sister. They're not the mother. And what I mean by that is that we understand the nature of what mental illness does, the rewiring. We know that. We know chemical imbalances. We know that. And then you add them 2 together. And yet, if there's any message, is when you're seeing your loved one like this, it's exactly like Ellen said. But there's a thing you can do. You can understand they're in their dis-ease. They're in their ism. And there may not be these other things that you can do, except be the best person you can be for them in that moment. And that's one of the greatest challenges we have right now, because
Yes.
most parents are not trained in that. Most people are not. Simone Biles still to this day is taking criticism on. I mean, some of the tweets on her, just honestly, because why? We don't understand it.
Right. That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. Look, the new movie, Elvis, okay? Did you see
Oh
the new
yeah,
movie,
not
Elvis?
yet, not yet.
Oh my God. Okay, it's all about this, and it's all about being captured under this spell, and it's all about how it takes one down, and it's all about how that old thinking, that 1950s, 1960s thinking prevailed, where everybody shoves it under the rug, that it is not a big deal, that it's not a real thing. But it takes such a unique individual like Maggie to come to the front and
Yeah.
say, this happened to my son, and I want you to know about it. So we really, really do applaud you for that. So now I want you to talk to us a little bit more about Mac's message. I mean, you talked about meaningful affirmation and compassion. Let's talk a little bit about more about what you feel Mac would want us to know.
I think he would just want you to know he was just an ordinary person, no different than anybody else. And he struggled with certain things. And he said this time and time again, that just commonality, that relatable level. Part of his message is about his compassionate spirit and the beauty of him. But it's also about his deepest struggles. And in an effort to help people connect and maybe not struggle, or maybe help a family. I think he was very compassionate to others. We stood at his wake, and it was during COVID, 9 hours next to him. The stories that came out were so empowering about how he loved and how he helped. I think in the big picture, he couldn't love himself enough. And I think that's a deep message for people, that it is hard to love yourself. But I think he struggled so much with that. He struggled to be able to receive the love back, even though it was there for the taking, to forgive himself, that you are more. I think learning you are more than your worst decisions. You are more than your addiction. You are more than your struggle, and separating that there is still a human being there. Our kid was always still there. And I thank God for that, because a lot of stories you hear, people don't get that. Their loved one goes off the grid, or their loved one disappears. He always fought so hard to be a part of us, and we fought equally as hard to be with him. And whether that was, sometimes it had to be at a distance, and it could not be under our own roof, as Dr. Pat said. He needed to walk that journey with people who could help him the best. So at different times, there was a different level of connection, but the love, we always began with, you are so loved and you are so worth this fight. And we always ended with that, no matter what conversation we were having with him. And I think that's so important.
Isn't that amazing, Dr. Pat? This is
Yeah.
so great. I love that she says over and over again, you are so worth this fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you are that person, that's not the way you feel about yourself. And so I want to be very clear about it. I did a show and I made a comment, and I should have clarified the comment a little bit further about those of us that have gone down the path and the impact we have on other people as we go down this path. But one of the things I think we're talking about here today, underneath all of this, there is a human being worth saving. See?
Yes.
There's
And
a
not only
human being
that,
worth saving.
and not only that, but what Maggie, I think, is so powerful at is not only coming from a parent point of view and explaining to parents what they need and how they should come with compassion and openness and awareness, but the message is more than that. The message actually comes from Mac to other people like him struggling, especially the youth and the young adult population today, saying things like, you are worth this fight. And no matter what, I hear you and we see you. And mothers and fathers and parents will do just as much to tear down this stigma as people that, like us, Dr. Pat, who are recovering alcoholics and addicts and fighting to bring the message out. How much more powerful it is when we have moms and dads like Maggie and Kevin on our
And
side.
we have to support Maggie. And this is the one thing I want to say. Yes, this is a great message, but I want to tell you how Maggie and what Maggie's doing gets supported. We have to be willing to donate. We have to be willing to put money towards saving lives. We have to be willing to say, you know, I'm not sure when, how, when, if, where, but yes, I want to contribute to something that is beyond pandemic. You know, when you look at what we're talking about nationally and post-COVID, oh my goodness, they don't even have the right numbers yet. They can't even capture it yet. And then when you look at that globally, and we're looking at the impact of anxiety, the only way this is going to work is if we put our money where our mouth is. And that is basically, you've got to be able to support what Maggie's doing. You've got to be able to donate. You've got to be able to say, yes, I will help. Because that is the way it works here in the United States. People fund these things themselves. And that's what's so important about this. Because I don't want this just to be a conversation. Because when we're talking about recovery, addiction, mental wellness, that is a conversation and an action. See, talk, act. Isn't that what we're doing today, Ellen, Maggie?
Absolutely. And this is the purpose. So let me go over it again. Please donate to Cormac Burke Scholarship Fund at trinitysoberliving.com/donate. You will be able to help pay for the recovery and the recovery residence for another struggling young man. And this is part of what we need to do to get one more person in recovery. trinitysoberliving.com/donate, or come and call me, Pushy Broad from the Bronx, 800-889-1757 if you're in the States. If you are down under, then please go to my website, pushybroadfromthebronx.com. Send me an email, shoot me a message, and I will get you information for Trinity Sober Living. So that's just.
I also think it's very important in the messaging and the narrative of all this for people to realize these are relentless diseases.
Yes.
Diseases. And they are fought courageously and battled, but these diseases are unforgiving if they go unchecked. And the stakes are so high. And people have no idea the amount of courage that it takes for people to wake up every single day and battle on a daily basis, on sometimes an hourly basis or a minute basis. And I think projecting that understanding to people is paramount, that they didn't ask for this, yet they're, these are warriors, and I have learned so much, I give, but what I get back from those in recovery,
oh yeah,
tenfold. They teach me so much about me. And I think there's phenomenal messages in everybody's journey, and meaning as well.
There's no question that there is, and we see it, don't we, Dr. Pat, on the faces of our patients, like the person that you mentioned this past weekend that you struggled with. We see the pain, we see the suffering, we see the anxiety, but we still see them coming back. They sit in front of me on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, and they never give up. And just because it is not a diagnosable disease that will show up on an X-ray or an MRI does not mean that it is not as insidious and dangerous as something that one can plainly see with an X-ray. Correct?
And
Doc?
and let's talk about this last thing too, if we could. And I think it's important, Maggie. I think you mentioned it now. And families keep this a secret. They kept my mom's situation a secret, but my stepmom kept her letters. That's how I found out. Had they not kept the situation with my mom a secret, we may have been able to save my sister's life. The fact that my stepmother shared the letters that my mom wrote from Bellevue Hospital, right? Right before her second attempt, saved my life. See that? We cannot do this in secret. And isn't that what you are saying? We have to break the cycle of shame.
Absolutely. My mother, who is a phenomenally strong individual, told me, you know, God gave you a voice and don't be afraid to use it. And, you know, I will sing from the rooftops to continue to get support. And people have blessed me with opportunities to speak. They've had 5Ks in Cormac's honor to speak. His wrestling coach had a whole message of Mac in a wrestling night, and they have shamrocks on their singlets. The message continues to live on, and his goodness continues to live on. And that is the way that helps me through my grief to connect, to continue to connect and do good, because there was so much good in this kid that is still has places to go, you know.
It's a wonderful message from a very, very difficult circumstance, and I'm sure it has affected your whole family. So how is the family doing now?
You know, we're doing well. I mean, when I look back, and I was talking to someone about Cormac's journey, and it's amazing we are still standing with what we endured. I mean, and I don't say that lightly. And I will tell you, it's amazing. Kevin and I, we are a solid team, you know, and our kids, we have beautiful kids. They're finding their path, their non-chaotic path, which I think is so important, because it was just chaos through 9 years and waiting for the shoe to drop. And we're trying to save a young man who keeps jumping in the deep end. And we've got 2 other kids. You know, when this started, Mairead was 9, you know, and they had to sacrifice so much in this journey because we kept throwing life preservers. You know, you're trying to parent over here, and you're trying to cover over here, and you're trying to cover all these bases. And it did help phenomenally that we let people in, because people did for our kids, and we had to let that happen. And I think we're a loving, tight knit. And I said, you know, we are unbreakable. We have been to hell and back, and nothing moving forward is going to break us, because that's what Cormac would want. You know, Cormac, we are driving from his strength and his fight and his courage, and just continuing to live our lives and see what that brings us, and how we can connect to his memory and to him on a daily basis.
And certainly none of that would have been possible if you didn't actively seek to make the family whole again and work on it in a way that very few people decide to, because this breaks up families, doesn't it, Dr. Pat?
There's no question about it. And, you know, the uncertainty and the lack of understanding. I mean, you know, when I realized what the pattern was in my family, when I understood my story about my mom's disease and how I was brought into the world. And, you know, when you're brought into the world and your mom is drinking and using, and she's carrying a pregnancy, there are consequences to that. And secrets do not help us. That's why you keep hearing me mention, and you did too today, Ellen, you did it, pop culture things that are coming out about this. You know, how young people, sitting through the series Euphoria is tough, but man, the message is brilliant. And Maggie, for you to come out and carry the shield, you see, because this is a courageous walk. People think that we're having this conversation and there are not consequences. We will get off this call and there will be a text message or an email to me or a tweet to me about somebody saying, get off your horse. I mean, we'll get that. It's not going to stop me.
Right. And but there will also be, I will get messages, I will get emails that will say to me, thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you. And those are the ones I pray for. I don't care if we get 10 don't do this again messages. As long as I get one thank you, as far as I'm concerned, that's what makes this worthwhile. And we are going to continue to do that. We are definitely going to tear down
Yeah.
this wall. So, Maggie, we've got about a minute left for you. Do me a favor and give us a last message. What do you want the message for our listeners to be left with today? What do you want to take away?
I think love, support, worthiness at every level, and unconditional love, and openness and awareness, I guess would be, it was how Cormac lived his journey, and we learned from him. And so, as I said, I stand on those courageous shoulders, and of those still battling. Their courage is immense, and they are worthy of feeling better and getting better at any cost or any juncture in their lives.
And also that moms and dads should never give up the fight no matter what, and should learn more and become involved and really educate themselves so that they have an active role in this, because you're all in this together, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, boy.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your courage and your resilience, and our best wishes to the Burke family for a good year and a good beginning to 23. We thank you so much for being with us on the air today. If you want to donate on behalf of Cormac Burke, again, it is trinitysoberliving.com/donate, or my 800 number, 800-889-1757. Call me. I'll get you further information, or go to pushybroadfromthebronx.com. Dr. Pat, why don't you finish us up?
I'm telling you, when you go to Trinity, it's very easy. You go to Trinity, over on the right, it says donate. That is one of the most powerful things you could do to help us stomp out this disease and raise level of awareness. This is bringing the journey of a young man and a family that has gone through the pain of this, but is showing up today like warriors in earth skin and in spirit. And there's nothing more powerful than that. So all y'all out there, give us a hand, help us out, help save a life. That's my message.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us today. You've been listening to Recovery Recharged with certified life and recovery coach Ellen Stewart, Pushy Broad from the Bronx. Don't miss your next opportunity to let me help you recharge your recovery, let go of your secrets, and change the way you think, feel, and act, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com.